Well, we're standing on the banks of the incredibly beautiful San Marcos River. And it's fascinating, I think, to know that this river probably has been here 22 million years. We have trouble thinking about that amount of time. We look at a small river and it's hard to recognize that it's been here so long. But as best as we can tell from geologic history, it has been here. It's fed, it is a spring-fed river. The very clear water in this river comes from the Edwards Aquifer, and it originates in springs that are just about, little more than half a mile upstream here. We're very near the headwaters of this river. And there are about 200 springs that water flows from the Edwards Aquifer into those springs, into what is now called Spring Lake. And that's what provides most of the flow of the San Marcos River. Now, as the river goes downstream, it receives runoff from a number of tributaries, small creeks, and then it actually encounters the Blanco River just downstream here, which all of those together end up making the flow of this 76-mile long river. Yet, when you think about a river, it's a small river, certainly. 76 miles long is not much of a river. Yet it receives water from a very large area to the west of here, the entire Edwards Aquifer that receives runoff from the Edwards Plateau to the west of here. And that's the main source of water. This river has been the home to an incredible variety of life. These big bald cypress trees that we have here on the river. I'm fascinated by these. They're incredibly beautiful trees. They are adapted to withstand floods. And there's an extensive root system here that protects the bank of the river, but also anchors these trees so that when floods come, which we don't have as much now as we used to, but these trees were designed, they evolved in order to withstand those floods. And they make an incredibly beautiful place for us to be here. Our species, Homo sapiens, has been associated with this river for maybe as much as 14,000 years that we know about. This is one of the oldest inhabited sites that people have lived. The Spring Lake area has artifacts dating back to what's called the Clovis era, which are probably around 12 to 14,000 years old. And so again, we think in terms of incredibly deep history. And I mentioned 22 million years, that's hard for us to understand. 12 to 14,000 years, that's still very hard for us to understand most of the time. But I love to be here and think about people enjoying this river in that long period of time. Europeans came here starting really in the early 1700s. Spanish explorers came here, and hence the name San Marcos. There was a town established a little bit farther down on the river called San Marcos de Neve, San Marcos of the Snow, because the Spaniards were here on St. Mark's Day and it happened to snow. And that name stuck even though the town did not remain very long. In the 1840s, the late 1840s, Anglos came in here. General Burleson built a dam upstream in 1849, which makes Spring Lake. That dam, or at least its descendants, are still there. We have Spring Lake. There are a lot of activities that take place on Spring Lake. It was one of Texas' earliest kind of ecotourism places, Ocarina Springs it was called, and now it's the home of the Texas River Center. Texas State University uses it for education and research. The river has been the focal point of this city of San Marcos. It provided the power for San Marcos. General Burleson built a grist mill and a sawmill, and that really was the main source of power, the main source of economic activity that established this town of San Marcos. We now use the river mostly for recreation, for beauty, for enjoyment, for preservation of endangered species. We're located on part of the river just above what's now called Rio Vista Falls. Rio Vista Falls has become one of the most popular whitewater places in Texas. It's a man-made fall. It's, I guess about 4 years ago, the city realized that one of the old dams was about to collapse. And so there's a company in Boulder, Colorado that makes artificial rapids. And so they developed a 3-step rapid here that's really quite a beautiful thing. Looks very natural. It's not. It looks natural. But it's one of the most popular whitewater runs in the state. And so we use this river for recreation. And that's been going on for a long time. The site where we're standing here was an amusement park, a resort actually. It's called Rogers Resort, built in the early 1900s. The family that started Ocarina Springs built this resort first. There were cabins that people would ride trains to San Marcos. They would stay at the cabins. And when we look around here now, there are stone walls and steps and a little island out in the river with a walkway going to it. All those things almost look like something from ancient Rome. They're kind of ruins that are here, but they're all left over from that amusement park or that resort, which was here 100 years ago. So people have been enjoying this river for a long time, very important ways. For the time between the 1850s and really about the 1920s, this river was put to work in a big way. There was a dam about every half mile, and those dams produced water power, hydroelectric power. They were used for irrigation. The river's course was modified to supply irrigation, so this was a real working river for a long period of time. It was a highly polluted river. The city of San Marcos built the first activated sludge wastewater treatment plant that was ever built in the country. It was built as an experimental plant. It was just upstream here, and it worked quite well, but for the 40 or 50 years that the city used it, it finally became overused and was not functioning properly. So the San Marcos River was quite polluted. But then in recent times, since the early 1970s, there have been very strong laws that protect the river. The San Marcos River Foundation has been very active in protecting the river. The city of San Marcos has been very diligent in doing the things to protect the river. A number of state and federal agencies ensure that the river stays as it should. So we've got something here that we can be very proud of, but something that continues to require our love and care.